This is like a super, super important step in this process is making sure that we clearly disposition the result of a completed meeting. And this is making us more aware of what is actually happening in these SDR meetings, which helps the SDR leadership with closed loop feedback and coaching, and then also ultimately creates enhanced accountability. Welcome to Market Mastery, the podcast dedicated to uncovering revenue-driving strategies for sales leaders in B2B tech. All right, I'm Kyle Smith, managing partner of the Bridge Group, sales consulting firm that helps SDR, AE, CSM leaders to build, expand, optimize their sales function. And I'm joined by Jesse, CEO of Cloud Pathfinder Consulting. Jesse, you want to do an intro?
Hi, my name is Jesse Grothaus. I'm the CEO and founder of Cloud Pathfinder Consulting, and we help sales and revenue teams use Salesforce better.
Great. Yeah. So really we're just merging like strategy and process with operational support. And so where we both engage with sales, marketing, and RevOps leaders on a consistent basis, one of the things that made Jesse and I come together is a consistent question that was popping up across client bases, which is the tracking of SDR, really comp triggers. And so that largely centers around meetings and pipeline creation. And so what we're going to talk through is how do we effectively track the SDR meetings set, completed, converted, and contribution to pipeline. And so we'll talk about where SDR leadership can focus in to make sure that they are coaching their team to improve performance, and then also ensuring that operations is providing effective support to allow that reporting to be a lot easier and not have a 300-row G sheet with a lot of manual tracking and effort to see what is the SDR's contribution, how are you going to pay them, so on and so forth. And so if we dive into really the first step in the process, SDRs engage with the prospect, they have some level of qualifying information obtained, and they're scheduling a meeting for their account executive counterpart. And so Jesse, from your perspective, like what's a way or one of the better ways that the SDR can go about tracking that first step in the process?
That first step being that the meeting is scheduled, you're going to want to use some custom fields in Salesforce to help accomplish this. And we're going to be using a process called like automated stamping that we'll get into the technicals here in a little bit. But you're going to want to track dates in particular of when these meetings were scheduled and then when they were occurred also.
Okay, great. And so what does that look like?
So we're going to be making some customizations to Salesforce here. So the first thing that we're going to do is click on this cog here and click setup, which will bring you to this screen right here. And you're now in the setup screen. And from here, we're going to click on this tab called Object Manager. And we're going to quick find here opportunity, or op for short. And go ahead and click on the opportunity object here. From here, we'll be diving into the fields and relationships on the left. And we'll use the quick find for stage. And go ahead then and click on the opportunity stage right here. So these are the opportunity stage values that come out of the box with Salesforce. You may have customized these already, or what we're going to be doing is changing a few of these around so that we can track these SDR meetings better.
And if we pause here, why the opportunity objects? Like some clients will use like event objects, some would use just like tasks. Like from your perspective, I have my own opinions, but from your perspective, what's the value of leveraging the opportunity object to track SDR meetings?
The value of using the opportunity object in particular to track meetings is that it's going to be the easiest in terms of reporting, and it's going to also be the easiest in terms of compliance and adoption for both your SDRs, AEs, sales managers. It's just easier overall for everyone to get on board with this process and much easier to report on than events or activities.
Yeah, I would agree. And then the attribution becomes a lot easier. So if possible, selling RevOps and sales on opportunity utilization to track the SDR meeting, this is the way to go.
So we have sales processes listed below. What we will want to do here is we're going to create a new opportunity stage that is going to be called SDR meeting. And this is going to really help with reporting. And you can either edit an existing opportunity stage, but typically if what we've seen in these engagements is that you're going to want to create a new stage and it's going to go before all these other ones with a probability of 0 just to kind of take it out of overall pipeline reporting. So we'll go through what that looks like technically here. So with the opportunity stages pick list values, go ahead and click new. And for the stage name, we're going to give it SDR meeting, leave type as open, probability as 0%. Anything with these red bars are going to be mandatory to fill in. Forecast category, you could do pipeline or omitted, depending on how your org has forecast categories set up. We're going to keep it on pipeline.
Yep. The one thing would be like, if you're feeling friction or resistance to this, 0% usually gets you over the hurdle if you have a sales leader who doesn't want SDR meeting showing up in pipeline or forecasting. But omitted, if you go 0% omitted, that might be one way, like if you are feeling resistance there, to get it actually approved to do it this way if you don't currently. But as Jesse said, could default to pipeline or omitted, but just an option there if you're facing pushback.
So we'll keep it on pipeline for the purpose of this. And of course, always as a good RevOps or sales ops, you're going to give it a description, such as stage 0 for tracking SDR meetings. And go ahead and click save. So once we have created this new stage, what we will then want to do is come down to our opportunity stage pick list values. And after we've created the stage, you can see that SDR meeting is now at the very bottom of this list, which means that it's not going to show up first. This is the order that when a rep clicks on the stage, when they're creating an opportunity, this is the order that those pick list values will appear. So we want this to reflect our actual process. So in order to do that, we're going to click reorder. So we'll highlight SDR meeting by clicking on it. And then if we want it at the very top, you can just click this top button here, or individually go up and down one with these buttons here, and we'll save it. And coming back down here, we can now see that when the rep opens up the stage pick list, the dropdown, they're going to see that SDR meeting is the very first thing they can choose.
Great. And so essentially the action would be, I'm the SDR, I have my qualification call, I've gathered some basic information. They have a pain. I think that there's a potential op there. I've met the qualification threshold required to book a meeting for my account executive. Once I have that, now essentially I'm creating an opportunity at this new stage that you've created, which is SDR meeting stage 0%. I think then the beauty is, for me, from a reporting perspective, if you're ever trying to understand how many meetings were scheduled, because this is happening at the scheduled stage, you ideally, if you have role-based reporting built out, you say user role equals sales development or SDR, and opportunity created date equals whatever time frame you're evaluating, probably like the month prior. And then you have all the opportunities created by the SDRs in your organization, which is how many meetings they've scheduled. So now you have the raw number of all the meetings scheduled, broken down by rep. So great starting point.
Exactly. So now that we have our SDR meeting stage name created, we don't yet have a good way to report on the dates of when these meetings actually occurred and how the meeting actually resulted in. So we're going to create a few more fields to help us track that. So still being on the object opportunity manager, we're going to come back over to fields and relationships, and we're going to be creating 4 new fields. So the first one that we're going to be creating is, we'll click new over here, and I'll just walk through. And you can slow the video down or pause it or take it step by step. I'll just go through here. The first one that we're going to be creating is the meeting status pick list. So first we're picking what type of field this is. It's a pick list. Make sure you do not select pick list multi-select, just pick list. Click next. Field label. This one is going to be called meeting status. And we're going to enter values here. And these are just some standard ones we have created. I don't see a reason to really deviate from these ones in particular, but we have that the meeting needs to be scheduled, that it has been scheduled, and that it has been completed. I like to click this one using the first value as the default value, but it doesn't quite necessarily need to be in here for this one. Always give it a good description, such as SDR meeting status. And the help text here, if you want a help text to show up for the users as they are hovering over the field, this will give them information where they can kind of get a little bit of help to remember what to do here. So remember to select this when booking a meeting. Click next. Depending on the individual profiles that you're using, let's say that it's standard user. You want to make sure that both boxes are checked here, visible. You want to make sure that the visible One is checked for whichever profile your sales users are using. So for us in this org, it's going to be the standard user or possibly the custom sales profile. That makes sure that they can see it. And then now we're going to be adding it on to the page layouts. So let's say we don't need marketing to see it, but we do definitely want sales to see it. We don't need support to see it, or you can just add it all, not worry about it. Then we're going to do save and new, coming to our second field. The second one is also going to be a pick list. This field label is going to be meeting results. And we have some standard values to add in here. And this tells you how the meeting went. So once the meeting has occurred, we're going to basically track to see if it's converting or not converting.
And then for the most part, this is like a super, super important step in this process is making sure that we clearly disposition the result of a completed meeting. And I think we see a lot of inefficiencies or flaws make their way into the process is the meeting date has passed and we don't have clarity over whether or not it was completed, which Jesse talked about in the previous step. But then even if we do, we know that it has been completed and the opportunity hasn't progressed. We have no idea what's going on with it. Was that a positive meeting? Did it meet all the criteria for conversion? Was it negative? If it was negative, why, right? So there's information gaps that exist here. And this is making us more aware of what is actually happening in these SDR meetings, which helps the SDR leadership with closed loop feedback and coaching, and then also ultimately creates enhanced accountability for the account executives who are the recipients of these meetings.
Yep. So as we continue the setup of this field in particular, on this one, I would not recommend checking that use first value as a default value. By rule of thumb, whenever you have this checked, consider that your users are just, some of the time, are just going to let this default to whatever is picked. And if you want them to actually make a decision on which one it was, then you need to uncheck this box so that this field is blank when their user goes to click on it. Otherwise, if you're okay with them being on the standard default first value, then you'll want to check this box. But for this, when you need to know yes or no, did this occur or did it not, you'll want to make sure that this box is unchecked here. I would also recommend checking this box in all of them, which is restricting pick lists to the values defined in the value set. Otherwise, it's going to give them the opportunity to create their own values in here. And if you give them that option, they will take it. And that's going to start making reporting very difficult when you're trying to learn how a dozen different SDRs are making their own tracking system.
Yeah.
So for sake of time, we'll just say good description, good help for user, and we'll go down to next. And we'll make sure that our custom sales profile is checked here and our standard user or whichever profiles you're using for your sales reps. It's good. We'll go ahead and save it. Everybody gets to see this on the page layouts. That's fine. Save and new. Now we want to make sure for our third field that we're able to take some notes on the meeting itself, so that when we pull up and report on these meetings, we're able to get a short description and understand what happened a bit more outside of just these pick list values. So to do that, we're going to have a freeform text. And if it's short, like just a single line of text, it's going to be looking a lot cleaner on the page layout. I'd recommend just this text box. If you want it to go longer, then you can experiment with these other different ones, which would be a text area, a long text area. I don't think you'll need to be doing a rich text area that gets them up to 130,000 characters with formatted text, images, links. So either text area or a long text area. For the sake of this demonstration, we'll just do the single text.
And basically what we're talking about here is a summary. Like that long form, fully detailed is going to be somewhere else, either notes or activities, correct?
Correct. Yeah, I wouldn't recommend trying to get all of your notes in on this particular field regardless. So I'd probably just go with the short line text.
Yeah, lean and mean summary.
And we'll give this one a name, meeting results notes. For the length, you get to choose how long you want these characters to be. Let's give it 50. That's usually a good one. Good description for admins to remember what this does, and very helpful text for users. And we'll go ahead and click next. Assuming that our profile visibility is all good to go, and we want this on all the page layouts as well. Save and new so that we can do our fourth and final field, which is the date that this meeting occurred. So for the data type, we'll scroll down. We will select date. And this is going to allow users to enter a date or pick a date from a pop-up calendar, so it's standardized. Click next. And we're going to call this one meeting date. Full backend description. Not much configuration we have to do on this one, so it's going to be a standard calendar pop-up. Helpful end user description. We don't need to give it a default value, so we'll click next. Assuming our profiles are all set up correctly. And we're going to add it to all the relevant page layouts. And from now, we're going to click save. And we are done adding fields. So we've now just added 4 fields to the opportunity record. So if we come over to an opportunity, let's say we're going to create a new one. So when we go to create a new opportunity, if these are our fields, we can see that fields have just been added without any real order. So we want to make sure that we're organizing this a bit further. So we're going to be editing the opportunity page layout. So coming back over into our setup, where we're in the object manager and opportunity, we'll go down to page layouts on the left here, and you'll need to know which page layout is being used by your users. So you'll want to double check that with your profiles, but we'll just go ahead and edit the standard. You can do that in the page layout assignment button over here, and you can double check which users are using which page layout. But to start, we'll just go ahead and edit the opportunity layout. And we can see here a preview of what our fields are going to look like on the page layout. So we can see that our 4 meeting fields have been added to the bottom here. And we want to separate them out and give them their own little section. So from here, we're going to find section and drag it down. Let's put it right down here. And we'll give this section a name like initial meeting information. And we'll go ahead and leave these boxes checked. 2-column, left, right, looks good. And then from here, we will just drag our fields down so that they show up in the order that we desire in our new section. From here, we'll click quick save. And let's come over to our opportunities again. So after we have saved, do a refresh again. Sometimes you'll need to do a hard reset. So I know if I'm on Mac and on a Chrome, that's Shift-Command-R. I'm not quite sure what it is on Windows. I think it's the same in Safari, but it's a hard reset on your browser. And if that doesn't work, you can also log out and log back in if you're not seeing the changes. But once we have done that hard reset, we're going to come into new. So I've created an opportunity, and now I can see that the initial meeting information has its own section over here. It's got its collapsible menu, which is nice. I do see that I have other fields that snuck in. So coming back to the page layout, I can see why. We have the initial meeting section here, and it has the fields here. And then for additional information, the header is only visible when you're editing. So from here, you can just drag a blank space. Okay, picking back up, we have already modified the page layout. And what we're going to go do now is test things out as our end user and make sure that everything's looking good. So from the sales home screen, let's say we're going to create a new opportunity. And whatever fields are mandatory to fill out, let's give this one some names here. Needs a close date. Stage, we're going to say, hey, this is SDR meeting. We're seeing that it's popping up first in this list, like we asked it to. And it's going to give that default probability of 0 there. And we see now that we have our own nice little section for all those initial meeting informations that we created. So let's say this one needs to be scheduled. There are no results yet from it. Here are our helpful text box that came up. And there's what the calendar is going to look like for the users because we select that date field. We're good to go. So we'll go ahead and click save. And here's what it looks like once that opportunity has been created. You can see down here, as we scroll down, here's that initial meeting information, its own separate section here. You can collapse it in and collapse it out. And you can now report on all these fields as they happen.
Great. And so now we know the SDR scheduled the meeting, when the meeting is scheduled for, and then once it is completed, Then we have to populate meeting results so we know it was completed and have opportunities to know essentially what happened in that meeting, short, lean and mean description, 50 characters or less, so that anyone could see at a glance, or really in a report view is where the 50 characters become really nice, so you can see at a glance what happened across all SDR meetings. And then what about conversion? So if this converts, and let's say we create at 0% SDR meeting, and then the second comp trigger would be an actual conversion to stage one. I think default is prospecting 10%, where it actually gets assigned at a dollar value. And that's how we track SDR pipeline contribution.
Okay. So we're saying the meeting has occurred and is now moving into the next stage.
Yep.
And we want to see what that looks like.
Yeah.
Let's do it. So we're going to click edit, advancing it in the stage, or another way, can we? Yep, mark this stage as complete. So we're now in the next stage, which is prospecting. Got that automatic change to that 10%. And we're going to come down here to our meeting information. So we had already scheduled it. We skipped that step, but we're now going to say it's completed. Meeting results. It is converting. That's why we're moving into the next stage. Great meeting. Wants to learn more about X. Oops. And this meeting happened today. This process is moving fast. So we'll go ahead and click save. And there's our new information about this meeting. And we can report on it as well if we'd like to walk through that.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Great. So we'll come over to reports. And we're going to click new report. And from here, we're going to be reporting on opportunities. So we'll select op in there and start report. From here, you may or may not be familiar with reporting in Salesforce, but we're going to add a column over here. And all of our fields that we created have the word meeting in them. So we can search for meeting or just MEE. And we can see our 4 here. So we're going to go through and click them all one by one. And as they get added, you'll see that they populate down at the bottom here. And we now have all these meetings. And we're going to run it now. So when we run this report, we can now see that we have these fields here. And if we wanted to report by filter, we can now then say, all right, show me all opportunities in the current fiscal quarter, any opportunity status, but I want to see where the meeting results were converted. So we type in meeting results into that filter, and then we'll say the operator equals, and the value we can then select from our pick list here to say converting. Apply. And we'll run it there. And we can now see our opportunities report where we have that opportunity test name, the stage, all the other fields that we wanted to see. And here's our meeting result notes and the date that that meeting happened.
Is it possible to make the amount field required only on certain stages? So the SDR could create at 0%, $0, because they haven't scoped a project at that point. And then once the account executive has the meeting, they convert it to the 10% stage 1 or whatever prospecting stage. Then at that point, when they're converting, they have to add a value.
Yeah, you can do that. You can say, hey, the amount field needs to be filled in before this opportunity can progress.
Great.
View that through a validation role.
Yeah. And then here, I mean, my recommendation here, if you're thinking SDR leader perspective, would be the rows would be created by. So then you have a summary report of all the meetings by which SDR actually set them up, which would be who created them. And then you can see totals for them by the disposition, essentially. How many need to be scheduled, how many are actively scheduled with future dates, how many have been completed, and what's the result of those that have been completed, all by rep in a nice lean and mean, clean view.
That sounds good. Here's walking through that a little bit here. Go to the outline and add group rows. We won't have too many because this is a developer org, but
yeah. There you go. Then you would see Jesse has 1, and then you can tell by the actual details on meeting results. Jesse had 1 meeting scheduled, which is completed and converting. That's the full process. So now you can easily measure what your SDR's contribution is to pipeline with the sum of the amounts on anything that's been converted, how many meetings that they're scheduled, how many really on the negative side were completed and aren't converting, so that you can, those are the ones that from an SDR leader perspective that you want to spend more time diagnosing. We got somebody to say yes to a meeting, but it did not progress. Is that natural reasons, like it wasn't a good fit after all through further evaluation, or they lost interest, they went with a competitor, whatever, or is it that we booked bad meetings? And those are the ones that you want to try to solve for. Coach the reps up and get them to book less of those. So thank you, Jesse. If people want to learn more about how to do this themselves, or actually want assistance doing something like this, or really customizing their Salesforce to meet the needs of their sales team and their go-to-market team, how can they get in contact with you or learn more about Cloud Pathfinder?
Yeah, I'd say find me on LinkedIn, Jesse Grothaus, or visit our company page, Cloud Pathfinder Consulting, or our website at cloudpathfinderconsulting.com.
Great. All right. Thanks, Jesse. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Kyle.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Market Mastery, brought to you by the Bridge Group. If you're a revenue leader in the B2B sales space or know someone who is, connect with me on LinkedIn. Don't forget to subscribe to stay updated on future episodes.